Hey guys, Salam, I'm Mohammed, and this is the first episode of our series of conversations about Islam, Shiism, Shia beliefs, and different kinds of topics about religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and all the branches. And we're going to have a nice conversation. We're here with our guest, Ali. Nice to have you here. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And hopefully we're going to have a nice conversation and we'll learn something. So the first thing I would like to ask you is to read a story from Quran about the descendants of Israel and their prophet Musa and Harun, if you don't mind. It would be appreciated. Thank you.
Well, hello, and hello to everyone who is listening. My name's Ali, as you mentioned, and it is a very controversial beginning of this series of talks, but I think it would be good, even though we want to talk about Islam and Shiism, but Christianity, Judaism, and all religions pertaining to what they call mainstream religions pertaining to one God and prophets he sends, and those that are actually mentioned and approved and validated by Islam, I think would be a nice beginning to the whole discussion. And it is the way of all prophets, as we know, and teachers, good teachers for that matter, that they begin with a story. They tell you a story and then you learn from it. And this tells us a lot about Quran itself, because there is a very big mistake that many people make when they read Quran or Old Testament or New Testament for that matter, that they just look at the text and forget that not everything in there is to be taken literally. It is literal to some extent, literal to some. You cannot dismiss all of it. You cannot accept all of it. You have to have the knowledge.
Nice way to put it.
Yeah, we're going to begin with this story, which is a very nice story. It is repeated throughout Quran many times in different places, and it is teaching us something every time it is mentioned, and not just something as in one thing, many things. The whole story tells us some things, and each and every part of it, each and every word has a purpose in there. So let's begin with this one in the Surah Taha. We have وَهَلْ أَتَاكَ حَدِيثُ مُوسَى, the ayah 9 of the Surah Taha.
Which page are you on?
It's 312.
Okay.
Uthman Taha, or Osman Taha as we say in Farsi, is the common version in our country because of certain characteristics it has.
All Muslims almost use this version of the Quran.
Yeah, there are differences in different countries. It is the narration of Hafs from Asim, but there are like Varshas, Nafi, Madani is another narration which is used in some countries, but that doesn't matter. We're going to get to those parts later on.
The authenticity, yes.
Yes.
It's a very important point.
But this one, which is very common amongst Muslims and Muslim countries, page 312, Surah Taha, ayah 9, it says, وَهَلْ أَتَاكَ حَدِيثُ مُوسَى. It means, and have I given you or told you the story of Moses? Now, this is one of those times in which this story is mentioned. And it begins with the time Moses has his family with him and moving back to Pharaoh, and he is to go to him and talk to him. But this is before he became a prophet, actually the night in which he becomes a prophet. So the story begins, إذ رأى نارا فقال لأهلهم كثوا إني آنست نارا لعلي آتيكم منها بقبس أو أجد على النار هدى. So it doesn't tell us everything. This is how Quran does it. It doesn't tell you the whole story. Now sometimes you can find other parts of the story in other parts of Quran, other surahs and ayahs, but sometimes you can't, and it doesn't matter because the purpose is for you to learn something. It's not to have fun, to have the whole story. So the part that pertains here is this part. Is ra'a naran. It means when he saw a fire. So imagine this. He's out there with his family, and it's night, it's dark, and they're almost lost in the middle of a desert. So he sees a fire in the distance. فَقَالَ لَأَهْلِهِمْ كُثُوا. He told his family to just wait here, hang in there. إِنِّي آنَسْتُ نَارًا. I'm going to go there and I'm going to bring you some of that fire. لَعَلِّي آتِيكُم مِّنْهَا بِقَبَسٍ أَوْ أَجِدُ عَلَى النَّارِ هُدًى. I'm going to go there, I'm going to bring you some of that fire, obviously to make fire and camp here, or I find a way ahead. Now, this part could have two meanings. It could be that I take that fire so that we could have a light moving on, or that fire is obviously lit by someone. So someone's there, I'm going to go to them and ask them which way we should go. So, double meaning. And this is all throughout Quran. You could have different meanings. You should use your brain, your mind, in order to understand which one could be true. Sometimes many different versions could. And that is how we say this Quran is not something you can just read it and understand everything, because there are double meanings, triple meanings, quadruple meanings. Ambiguity and so on and so forth. So here, he says, I'm going to go there and I'm going to bring you some fire, or I'm going to find a way. فَلَمَّا أَتَاهَا نُودِيَ يَا مُوسَى. So when he went to the fire, actually, the God says, when he came to the fire. Now, there's another thing to be learned here. It means God is the person or the entity who has made that fire. It wasn't someone else, but it could also be when he went to the fire, another ambiguity. So when he got to the fire, Nudiya ya Musa, there was this voice saying, oh, Moses, talking to him. Nudiya comes from nida, as you mentioned, which means calling on someone. When I call you and say, Muhammad, do this or that, it means I'm calling you, calling on you, calling upon you, and that is nida.
Okay.
So
it's not whispering.
No. Now, we have whispering in Quran.
Najwa?
Yes.
Okay.
Which means, saying it in a lowered voice, but here it means, and there are different things to be discussed. That's another thing. So, did God make a voice, or was it something else? Because
was it God himself?
and
Because
these
Musa
parts,
insists on hearing God himself so much.
and seeing him.
He
wants to see him, and actually God says okay, and then something very interesting happens there. He just
there's this
faints.
verse that says Lan tarani ya Musa, you're never gonna see me, like just don't ask for this.
Yes, but then in the end God gives in to him, and he فَتَجَلَّى رَبُّهُ لِلْجَبَلِ. It means God showed himself to Moses by just coming down to a mountain. Now this tajalla comes from the word jala, which means showing something, manifesting something. And he manifested himself through a mountain, and that is another thing to be discussed. If we want to get to the details of the wording and the story, it's very comprehensive. So we have to just go step by step. Yes. So, إني أنا ربك فاخلع عليك إنك بالواد المقدس طوى. This is me, your God. I am definitely your God, verily your God, your creator. And take off your shoes. نعليك, نعلين, meaning the shoes, a pair of shoes. So take off your shoes. إنك بالواد المقدس طوى. You are in a holy site of Toa, a sacred site of Toa. So that desert, wherever he was named Toa, according to Quran, to this ayah. And God is telling him to just take off his shoes because he's there. Now, another thing, it's a sign of respect to take off your shoes. You see, when you look at Quran and ayahs in this light, that anything that says has a meaning, and that meaning has another meaning, and then you can just take a thread, pull on it, and follow it. You can learn a lot of things from that very small thing that is mentioned. So when he says, take off your shoes, this is a sacred site, it means when you enter a sacred site, you have to take off your shoes, and taking off the shoes is a sign of respect. You have to be barefooted. And actually, we could have another argument here. Was that site holy, or did it become holy because God was talking to Moses in that specific place? But that's another discussion for another time. وَأَنَا اخْتَرْتُكَ فَاسْتَمِعْ لِمَا يُوحَى. It means, and I have chosen you. اختار comes from the word choosing, and we actually call humans as mukhtar, meaning having free will. But this here means, I have chosen you, فَاسْتَمِعْ. So listen, لِمَا يُوحَى. Now again, he doesn't say, for what I tell you, for what is told, for what is understood,
for what is revelated,
or revealed, or revelated, or there are many different words that could be used here. But again, this is the point, because even if you have one
wahy,
word,
we call revelation to wahy.
Yeah, that is one word used for it, but you know, it's never precise. When you go from one language to another, if it is a normal text or a scientific text, the purpose is for you to convey the meaning.
One meaning or two meanings, like there's no point in scientific text to take advantage of the ambiguity,
yes,
or having to carry different meanings.
Yes, but in Quran, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
If you want to translate it, if you want to make the other person understand, now first of all, in order for you to understand it perfectly, you have to learn Arabic.
Definitely.
Because you can never translate the text, even if it's plain, completely plain, to another language, if you don't have access to the author to talk the points and get the exact meaning. But if that author is God and you don't have access to the creator, the author at all, and you don't know the exact meaning, you always have to put in some explanation, some description, some way for the reader to understand that it is my perception, my understanding. It may not be God's words, it's my understanding of it. But here, again, it says, just listen to what is told, or what is revealed, revelated, whatever. إِنَّنِي أَنَا اللَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنَا فَاعْبُدْنِي وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِي. It says, I'm, again, verily I'm the God, Allah, as we call God.
It has so many intensifiers. Like.
Yes. And you know the interesting thing, we have different words for God in different religions. Jews call him Yahweh.
Yahweh, yeah.
We have God for Christians, and we have Allah in Arabic for Muslims. But all of them point to the same entity. The characteristics of that entity could be understood. The names are very different in appearance, but point to the same entity in meaning. But here, again, we can get into the word of Allah and what it means. But let's just get on with the story for now. We're going to get back to this. So I'm your God. There's no God but me, no creator but me. So worship me, فَعْبُدْنِي وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِي. And say your prayers, make your prayers to لِذِكْرِي.
My remembrance, we can
Well,
say.
you could say that because one of the meanings of the word dhikr is something to remember someone by. But there are other meanings too. And dhikr could also mean أقم الصلاة, say your prayers just to say my name, just to have it pronounced, just to use your tongue and make this words come out of your mouth.
Yeah.
It could also be in order for you to remember me, for my remembrance, as you put it. Or to just have me in you and with you. It is another meaning. Now,
dhikr I would like to add to this, if you don't mind, that dhikr in Quran means the Quran itself. We have this verse in Surah Al-Hijr, the verse 9, that إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ, which refers to the Quran as a dhikr, which means, and yeah, I agree with you. You can say that it's just to pronounce the name, but I would like to say that my interpretation of aqim as-salat al-dhikri is establish the prayer, like make it stand, like do something that so it's there, like you somehow. And lidhikri, I think just to pronounce it, like I don't know if it's the right translation, or I don't know my interpretation is the right translation, but I have seen so many verses in the Quran that the prophets came down to remind you of something you already know or you already have felt. So this is like it's not to teach you, it's to just remind you that
Yes.
what you have already felt is true, and just be sure and take steps based on it.
Yes, we also have that. So, إن الساعة آتية أكاد أخفيها لتجزى كل نفس بما تسعى. Now, it means the time is definitely coming, and it's a loose translation, and the time could be different times. It appears as though it is the time of the judgment day.
Resurrection,
No, the judgment day. The day in which all human beings are to be judged by God. But
weren't they the same day? Resurrection and the day.
No, resurrection, because it is specific word used for coming back from the dead, and that is used for Jesus coming back from the dead. He was resurrected, and the day of resurrection was after he was dead and in his tomb for 3 days.
When they say resurrection, they mean Jesus coming back, yes. Not that we all...
No. Yeah. They mean he was dead for 3 days, and then he was resurrected, and then he went to heaven, ascended to heaven. This is one of those things that are mentioned in Bible, and there are different narratives of the story, but ours is completely different. We say he wasn't killed, but again, that's another topic for another day. So, أكاد أخفيها, it means I want to hide it, لتجزى كل نفس بما تسعى, so that everyone would be either punished or rewarded for whatever they have sent over or tried to do or whatever. فلا يصدنك عنها من لا يؤمن بها واتبع هواه فتردى. Now, these are parts that point to God's message to Moses. These are not, strictly speaking, parts of the story, but there are parts of the conversation God had with Moses before getting to the main message that we want to focus on here. But just to mention them, so فَلَا يَصُدَّنَّكَ عَنْهَا مَنْ لَا يُؤْمِنُ بِهَا, it means so no one who doesn't believe in that time, in the judgment day, should pull you away from it or obstruct your path to it. The person who doesn't believe in that day and does whatever they want, who follows their hawa, means whatever they desire, their desires, fatarda, and so he's off the main path, off the main road, the path to God. And then the story begins. وَمَا تِلْكَ بِيَمِينِكَ يَا مُوسَى. What is that in your right hand? Now, Moses answers, قَالَ هِيَ عَصَايَ أَتَوَكَّأُ عَلَيْهَا وَأَهُشُّ بِهَا عَلَى غَنَمِي وَلِيَ فِيهَا مَآرِبُ أُخْرَى. Now, in this ayah, وَمَا تِلْكَ بِيَمِينِكَ مُوسَى, it is at least apparently, clearly what God says to Moses. Now, the tense here is the present tense, and the story is narrated in present tense as it is happening right now. But then it goes to past tense, qala. It means said. Now, it doesn't say who said, but you have to figure out for yourself. Now here, it's fairly obvious, Moses said, because it's just Moses and God talking, but there are many places in Quran that this could be the source of ambiguity and having double, triple, quadruple meanings, because it could point to different people.
Yeah.
In Arabic, we have this different structure in comparison to English. You don't need to use a subject
Yeah. You can
plainly
just say the
brought
verb.
in your sentence. So here says qala, meaning said. It is not mentioned that Moses said it. Hiya asai, it means it is my stick, it is my cane. Atawakkau alayha, it means I lean on it, I use it to help me walk. Ahushu biha ala ghanami, it means I guide my flock, or I get them food from the trees, different
Arrange
meanings
them.
again. وَلِيَ فِيهَا مَعَارِبُ أُخْرَى, and it has other benefits for me in it. And قَالَ أَلْقِهَا يَا مُوسَى, again pointing to God, past tense, said, throw it, O Moses. O Moses, throw it down. So, past tense, it means throw it down. فَأَلْقَاهَا, so Moses threw it. فَإِذَا هِيَ حَيَّةٌ تَسْعَى, so in that moment, it became a snake slithering, a snake moving about. So it's like suddenly that stick, that cane, became a snake. قَالَ خُذْهَا وَلَا تَخَفْ, it means he said, God said, take it, خُذْهَا وَلَا تَخَفْ, and don't be scared, fear not.
Fear not.
Now, it doesn't say that Moses was scared, but when God is telling him, take it and don't be scared, obviously he was scared. He saw it, he got scared. Now, this is another thing. He doesn't tell us everything.
Yeah.
The Quran doesn't mention everything, but there are a lot of things you can glean yourself, you can understand yourself. If you look at it, if you follow the story, you can understand that this must have happened if he wasn't scared. So why did he tell him not to be scared? So he must have been scared. And afterwards, you're going to see that this is one of the characteristics of Moses. And I think Israelites in general, now he was one of the most famous, most established people in Israelites, what we call Bani Israel. Israel is actually Ya'qub or Jacob in the language of Quran, and I believe Jews have the same thing. Israel for them is also Jacob, and Bani Israel or Israelites are his sons and sons and sons and so on and so forth. So Moses was a very big prophet amongst them. He's kind of like the flagship person of the whole tribe, but he's a very fearful person. And I think this characteristic is transferred through generations to all Jews, but we're going to get to that again. So we don't want to be anti-Semitic, even though there are a lot of things that are not good. And we should have this in mind, that every group of people, whether it's an ethnic group or religious group or a race even, they have their strengths and weaknesses. They have their advantages and disadvantages when it comes to their beliefs and behaviors and whatever. So when saying they have this weakness, it doesn't mean they're bad people. But not saying it means you're afraid to tell the truth and you're just overlooking it because you're looking at your audience and the people listening to you, and you want to say something.
Protecting your sacred interpretation of what they were in terms of, they were prophets, so you want to protect your identity, your rightfulness, and
yeah. So honesty, I think, is the best policy.
Definitely.
So here he says, do not be scared. Take it. Do not be scared. سنعيدها سيرتها الأولى. It means we're gonna turn it back to what it was, to its first shape and figure, and it will become your stick again, your cane again. وَاضْمُمْ يَدَكَ إِلَى جَنَاحِكَ, and put your hand in your side, which means, as our interpretations go, that you put it in your clothes. I don't know what we call it, your robe or whatever, the article of clothing, whatever he had on, you put your hand in there, and تَخْرُجْ بَيْضَاءَ مِنْ غَيْرِ سُوءٍ آيَةً أخرى. And when you bring it out, it will be white, it will be shining, with a bright white light. But من غير سوء, it wouldn't be bad.
Without any, like, it says that it doesn't have any bad characteristics.
Yeah. It means it wouldn't harm you. Again, just calming him down so that he wouldn't be scared. You bring it out, it's going to be fine. Don't be afraid. This is nothing to be scared of. Ayatan ukhra. Ayah means sign. It is one of the most obvious meanings of the word. So ayatan ukhra means you're going to have another sign. So we understand that the first thing, the cane thing, becoming a slithering snake, and the second thing, the hand becoming bright and shining and whatever, these are signs. So a sign is used to tell someone something. So you have your, I don't know, municipal signage, for instance. You go out there, it tells you that this is the name of the alley, this is the name of the street, and so on and so forth, or your speed limit and whatnot. And all of those are to inform you of something, to let you know something. So here says, these are your two signs. It means you're going to have to tell someone something. And you can use these two signs. Now, لنريك من آياتنا الكبرى, in order for us to show you from our great signs. So these two
great, kubra is the superlative form in Arabic. Akbar, kubra. We say greater signs, so that we can show you, so that we show you from our greater signs. Like say, I think this would be better.
Yes. So اذهب إلى فرعون إنه طغى. So go to Pharaoh.
This is the first thing that God asks him.
Yes. Go to Pharaoh. He has disobeyed. Now, tagha comes
rebelled, I guess.
Rebelled,
would be
yes.
better.
Yes. Tagha means doing something against something else. Now, you have, for instance, your streams flooding. Now, when you have a flood, we call this in Arabic طغيان. Now, that means that has, as you put it, rebelled or fought against those walls in which that stream had to move. You move past those walls.
Crossed lines.
Very
crossing
good.
lines.
Yes, very good. It could be the meaning, crossing lines and doing something you're not supposed to do. And we have this other ayah in Quran, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَيَطْغَى أَنْ رَآهُ اسْتَغْنَى. It means human beings will rebel, will cross lines, and it is definitive. لَيَطْغَى. La means definitely. It means human beings will definitely rebel and cross lines if أَنْ رَآهُ اسْتَغْنَى, if they see themselves as in no need, if they think they are in no need.
And رآه استغنى from استفعل, from that rhyme, it puts the I think it puts the meaning of presuming and thinking this way about yourself and considering it to be this way.
Yeah, that's the reason here I'm actually, if we want to get to the interpretation, it's because we're never in no need. We're always in need. And I'm not talking about needing as in we have to have our hands out for someone to help us. No, God says you need me. You don't need anyone else. Just me.
أنتم الفقراء
إلى الله. Yes, very good. It means you are beggars of God. You're in need of God. And that's it. If you need me and if you believe that I'm there to fulfill your needs and desires, to give you whatever you need to have a peaceful and good life, you're not going to need anyone else. And that doesn't mean you have to cast others aside and live alone. No, not at all. It doesn't mean do not cooperate, do not partner up with someone, do not do anything with them. No. Yes, very good. Exactly. It's not that. It says you're not in need. It means you don't have to do it. You get to do it, and I'm telling you to do it. But know that in the end, if I don't want you to have something, you're not going to have it. If I do want you to have something, then you're going to have it. Imam Ali has a very beautiful saying that actually we have heard this in the narration that was mentioned by Sanwar, that he said, Imam Ali says, there are 2 days in your life. The day you're supposed to die, that is decided for you to die and the day you're not supposed to die in. So when that day comes in which you're not supposed to die, if the whole world conspires to kill you, you're not going to die. And in that day that you're supposed to die, if the whole world conspires to keep you alive, you're going to die. So don't be afraid. That's the message in that narration. Imam Ali says, don't be afraid, because you do the right thing. The day you're supposed to die, you're going to die. The day you're not supposed to die, you're not going to die. And that's it. Don't be scared. Now here again, we're getting back to this scaring, fearing, and so on. So he says, go to Pharaoh. He's rebelled. He's disobeyed. And God first introduces himself and then gives him two signs, two of those major signs, and then tells him, go to Pharaoh. We're going to get back to this part when we talk about Muhammad, the last prophet, or Imam Ali, or many other figures, that this order of things happening, it is different with different people. Now for Moses, God first gave him something, and then he tells him that before this I had given you many things, I had considered you, and I had helped you along the way, and it is mentioned, but for now, God tells him, just go to Pharaoh. He is rebelled. But then, what does Moses do? What would you do if you come to me and you see that I'm the person that has created you? I'm your God. I have created you. And I instantly give you two very powerful things, two very precious things. You have your cane that becomes like snake and very powerful, one big one, as we have in our narrations and the history. And I give you your hand, which becomes a very bright and shining hand with this bright light, bright white light. And then I tell you to go to Moses, that go to Pharaoh, and the first thing Moses says is, "Qala Rabbi shrah li sadri." He asks for something. He says, God, please widen my chest, or my heart, you could say. It means give me the power to be calm and composed during all of this. Now again, we have a lot of things to say about this specific wording and the interpretation of it, but for now, he asks for something. Just give me a brave heart, you could say. وَيَسِّرْ لِي أَمْرِي, and make my job easy for me, or easier for me. So, وَاحْلُلْ عُقْدَةً مِّن لِسَانِي, and my tongue. I have this problem with speaking. This is another story we have in our narrations, that when he was a kid, Pharaoh, because he was brought up in Pharaoh's house, and Pharaoh just suspected him of being the child that is to bring him down. So he put him to a test, and he put fire on one side, the dates on another side. And he just put Moses there. Fire is beautiful, it's red. There are pieces of wood, coal, that are heated, and they're red and glowing. And you have dates that are black and there. So a kid with no knowledge would go to the beautiful thing, to the light. But a kid that understands, that is different, would go to the dates. So he put Moses there, and he went to the fire, and he picked one piece of it and put it in his mouth very fast. And that is why his tongue was burnt, so he couldn't speak easily. But it is just one narration with regard to this problem. But here he says, just give me power of speech, you could say.
Where did you see this narration?
I don't remember, but you could search it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly, but I do remember this speech. And you can ask Mrs. Hakimzadeh.
Okay.
She will help you with the sourcing of this. So, يَفْقَهُ قَوْلِي, so that it would make them understand what I say.
They would comprehend it perfectly. Like fiqh, this root, it means like deeply understanding it, because the message Like, you want to take down Pharaoh. That message has to be a
Clear.
little bit complicated and little sophisticated so that these guys can believe it. Like, how can you take down Pharaoh?
Yeah. So you could say he's saying just
Like, I have sympathy for the man. Like, God tells you, okay, your stick changes and you have this light, and go kill all these people, or take the descendants of Israel and take them somewhere else. Like, it's hard to take it in. I think we talk about him being afraid, but he had all the reasons in the world to be afraid, because the kingdom of Pharaoh is not something that we can imagine today.
actually I don't believe that part. He had all the reasons in the world to
Not be afraid.
fearful. No, you're saying he had the reason to be fearful.
No, I'm just saying I have sympathy for his
Oh,
concerns.
okay, that is understandable. That is understandable. But if you think of it as he would have, and see it for what it is, if you believe in God, if you're to be the messenger of God, if you're to be a prophet, and God is speaking to you, again, something to be said here, speaking, what does it mean, and how God did it. But for now, if God's speaking to you and you believe that's God, that's the Creator talking to you,
Believing in God and understanding the way He operates or the way He is something else. And I see this development in human beings in the Quran. Like, the first prophet and the first children of the first prophet were really primitive. Like, the conversations that they had, the concerns that they have, are not the kinds that, for example, the Prophet Muhammad had. I think they developed over time, and they didn't know, like, if there is no text about God whatsoever, He just introduces Himself for the first time to you, like, you haven't seen any sign, and He introduces Himself to you. You don't know what it is or how He wants to do what He wants to do. So you might say, okay, what is the plan? The first second I enter their territory, I'm guilty of certain things I'd had done before. For example, killing of that.
yeah, you're
person.
moving, you're moving ahead. So just hang on.
No,
there.
I'm just pointing that this is the story. We have some stories before this incident that indicates why he was fearful to go to Pharaoh again.
but what
He was
I'm
raised
talking-
by the Pharaoh practically.
No, not practically.
Literally.
Actually, yeah, literally was raised by Pharaoh and his family. But the thing that I'm saying is not about what is done and what is going to be done to him, because you have the part about those magicians that Pharaoh had, and when they see Moses throwing his stick and it becoming actually snake, a real snake, devouring all their magical snakes, they realize that it is real. It's not a magic trick. It's no trick. It's real. So they believe that there is a higher power. And when Pharaoh tells them, I'm going to cut your hands and your legs, they say, okay, it doesn't matter. Now, why are they not afraid? Moses has this stick. They just see it. They don't have it. God doesn't talk to them. God gives the message to Moses. Moses talks to those people. But when they see this sign, they believe in God and they're not fearful anymore. They're not afraid of death. And that's what I'm talking about. You see?
Because the moment that they put their, like, they did their trick, there's this verse that Moses felt like God tells him, throw it.
Yes.
Like, it's going to work again.
Yes,
Like,
it is.
Do we
it
have
is
this?
so. It is.
Can you remember the verse? ألقها ولا تخف إنك أنت الأعلى. We have.
Yes.
Throw it
let me
and
see,
don't be afraid, because you're above them. You're higher.
I think it's
Okay.
actually here. Yeah, it's here. وألق ما قلنا لا. Yeah. قال بل ألقوا فإذا حبالهم وعصيهم يخيل إليه من سحرهم أنها تسعى فأوجس في نفسه خيفة موسى قلنا لا تخف إنك
This is
أنت
literally.
الأعلى. Yes.
This is not indication. Like.
But you see, there's a beautiful part here. He says قال بل ألقوا فإذا حبالهم وعصيهم. It means, so they threw their ropes and their sticks, their canes, يُخَيَّلُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ سِحْرِهِمْ أَنَّهَا تَسْعَى. He imagined from their magic tricks that they are moving and slithering towards him. So for him, he says, أَنَّهَا حَيَّةٌ تَسْعَى. It was a snake slithering. But for them, it says he imagined them to be snakes slithering towards him because of their tricks. فَأَوْجَسَ فِي نَفْسِهِ خِيفَةً مُوسَى. So he got afraid. And when this happened, when he felt fearful, قُلْنَا لَا تَخَفْ إِنَّكَ الْأَعْلَى. We told him, actually, but the him is not here, but we said, don't be afraid. You're going to top that. You're going to be on the top. وَأَلْقِ مَا فِي يَمِينِكَ تَلْقَفْ مَا صَنَعُوا. Throw what you have in your hand, in your right hand or in your hand. It's going to just devour all that they have created. إِنَّمَا صَنَعُوا كَيْدُ سَاحِرٍ. It's a magic trick. Kaid, it means trick. In كَيْدُ سَاحِرٍ, a magic trick, a magician's trick. So that is a magician's trick. وَلَا يُفْلِحُ السَّاحِرُ حَيْثُ أَتَى. And a magician cannot be the winner, however he performs. It means this is not the place of magic, it's reality, it's real. But getting back to the story itself, so tells him to go there and he starts asking for things, and then يَفْقَهُ قَوْلِي وَاجْعَلْ لِي وَزِيرًا مِنْ أَهْلِي. Now wazir comes from the word wazr, which means the load, the thing you have to carry. And wazir means the person who carries the load. Now, we have this in governments. In Farsi and in English and in Arabic, we say this wazir means secretary. So we have the Secretary of State, the Foreign Secretary, for instance, Education Secretary. Now, those are actually the equivalents of wazir. And those are the people who carry the weight of those specific branches of government for the president. So the president is the number one, and then you have your wazirs or secretaries as number two, the number one in a specific area. And here he says, put him as my number two.
Yeah.
وَاجْعَلْ لِي وَزِيرًا. And then he says, it should be from my family, min ahli. Ahl means my family. Harun akhi. And then he names this second person, or the person who's second in command, Harun akhi, my brother Aaron. So it should be him. Ushdud bihi azri. It means strengthen my back. It means make me lean on him, or make him like a pillar I can lean on to and be strengthened up by him. وَأَشْرِكْهُ فِي أَمْرِي. And make him a partner in whatever I do. So let us just partner up. And كَيْ نُسَبِّحَكَ كَثِيرًا وَنَذْكُرَكَ كَثِيرًا. So that we would worship you and we would remember you or mention you a lot. So basically, he starts, after God tells him to do something, with a series of requests. Do this, do that, let me talk to them, make it easier for me, put someone to be my second in command, to be my actually partner, so that we can partner up, make it Aaron, and so that he could do all these things. إِنَّكَ كُنْتَ بِنَا بَصِيرًا. You were actually seeing of us, or you're observant of us, you're observing us at all times. These are actually a little difficult. The meaning is easy.
You're
but
aware, like you know everything.
Yeah, all-seeing eye, you could say you are the all-seeing eyes. It means you're seeing us and you understand, because basir comes from not just seeing, but seeing into something or having insight, as they say. قَالَ قَدْ أُوتِيتَ سُؤْلَكَ يَا مُوسَى. Said, we gave you what you asked for, Moses. So here, God responds with, okay, whatever you asked, we granted. We granted your requests. وَلَقَدْ مَنَنَّا عَلَيْكَ مَرَّةً أُخْرَى. Actually, we have granted you something else before. Now, manna, which is mentioned as mananna here, means someone does you a favor. Someone grants you a favor. And here God says, we have done you another favor in another time. إِذْ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمِّكَ مَا يُوحَىٰ. When we revelated or revealed to your mom what was revealed or revelated. Actually, simply put, when we told your mom what was told. Now, this is another structure, grammatical structure, that is used throughout Quran. Now, we told her what was told. Now, maybe all of it is not mentioned here. Parts of it are mentioned. The relevant parts, the important parts for you to understand the thing that is to be understood here. So, it says, we did you this favor, granted you this favor, one other time when we talked to your mother and told him what was told. Now, what was it? The very infamous story of baby in the basket, that put him, put him in a basket, put him in a wooden crate, and then throw that into the sea or the Nile, the river, as they say. It will be taken by the sea to the shore. And then my enemy and his enemy, someone who's my enemy and his enemy, means Moses' enemy, will take it. So you put it in this crate, put it in a basket, and throw this basket into the river. The river will take him to the shore, and where it gets to the shore, it will be taken by someone who's my enemy and his enemy. This is another very interesting thing. What I mentioned, Imam Ali says, the day you're not supposed to die, even if the whole world conspires, no one can do it, no one can kill you, you're not going to die. This is the same thing. God is saying, someone who's my enemy and the kid's enemy, the baby's enemy, is going to take him, but obviously he's not going to be killed. So, the rest of the story is actually talking about how Moses continues this talk with God, and again we have this being fearful mentioned over and over and over again. Now, I want to get back to this story, even to this same surah, because we have this story in various parts of Quran, but this surah itself and the story that is mentioned here, parts of it, and then other parts in other surahs, these parts and these stories have so much to teach us when we look at them. And Moses,
it's amazing.
Yes, Moses has this title of being God's, you could say, the person who talks to God. Again, it is hard to be put into words.
Kalimullah.
Yes. Kalim comes from kalima or kalam, meaning speaking or speech or spoken words. Yeah. But kalim means the person you talk to. Yeah. And the person who's your, you could say, companion, but not in the sense that you are with that person, but the person you talk to. So because of this characteristic, and Moses is very talkative, actually. You can see it here. God asks him, what is that in your hand? He doesn't say my stick. He says, this is my stick, and I lean on it, and I use it to just guide my flock, and it has other purposes, other benefits for me. So it was just a question, what is it? Because I wanted to say to you to throw it, but he comes back with like a bunch of things about that stick. So this type of person that talks so much about a very simple question is the person that talks to God in various places, and various things are mentioned about him, and the story is very educational, you could say, in content, because he does things that are not things that a prophet who's pure, a prophet who doesn't make mistakes would do. And the discussion about his personality, his characteristics before he became a prophet and after he became a prophet, and the differences between those two periods of his life, and the differences of what we see as narrated in Quran and what we believe the majority of the Muslim world and Muslim population believe about prophets, it could be contrasted here, understood here, because the wording in some instances are so clear, and you can understand that he was a person that made mistakes. At least before he became a prophet, it's obvious. And even afterwards, you see things that could be construed as mistakes, but at least not perfect.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. So I think we could close this up here.
Yeah.
But we're going to definitely
thank you so much,
get back to
like
this.
for giving this clear explanation.
You got it.
Thank you. And I would like to ask my first question, that is what is your religion? First of all, what do you believe in any religion? And what is your specific religion and the reasons behind it? Just give me the summary and then we're going to take it from there.
You see, when we talk about religion and we look at different people believing in religions, we come up with this narrative of this world, its origins, and the roles different people, famous people throughout history had in the societies in which they lived. We call them prophets or imams for Shiites. And we define them with these specific characteristics based on our worldview. And I think that is a mistake. We first conform to an idea, to a religion, and then we get everything from that. But we have this in Islam. I'm a Muslim. We have this in Islam, that the basics, the premise based on which you build your faith, it cannot be gotten from anywhere or anyone. You have to get there yourself. And it's fairly easy to get there. And then comes the rest of it. And it's all in one very understandable, very clear block of information, consistent throughout all of it, from beginning to end. And that is the thing that has caused me to be a Muslim and a Shiite, what we call Shia. That it is consistent, logical, sensible, and reasonable. And any other religion for that matter, it's not acceptable to me because they're in fight, in contradiction with their own premise. And I'm going to get to them for Christianity, Judaism, or other branches of Islam. But on the other hand, I have this belief that it doesn't matter what your religion is. My relationship to anyone else in this world, with any person, any human being, with any religion, is defined based on the basics, the primitive premises of religion and understanding of religion. So as a Muslim and as a Shiite, I believe there's one creator, one God. And I don't get the characteristics of that God from the religion. I get it from my mind. Now, there are many people in different religions that believe you cannot understand God or whatever, and you have to rely on your religion to get the definition and the characteristics of God. But I say that is looking at it backwards, because you get to religion because you understand your God. And you cannot understand every characteristic of God. You cannot understand what God actually is, but you can understand what God isn't and shouldn't be. So I look at it like this. This whole world, even life, is created. It hasn't come out of nothingness. You cannot have nothing and suddenly have something. Now, in different schools of thought, they say there was nothing, and then this nothingness became this this awareness, and then it became like this soul and an understanding, and then it became matter. But this becoming, it cannot happen on its own. When you have nothing and then you have something, which is the defining point in religions, at least those religions who believe in God, it is that when you have nothing, you can't suddenly have something. There has to be someone to bring that something into existence. And that someone cannot be matter or created itself. That is where the definition and the most important characteristics of God comes from. There has to be an entity, what we call a creator or a God. There has to be one that is outside of the realm and confines and limits and restrictions of matter and created. It has to be with no need. It has to be not of this material world, and it has to have the power to bring this whole material world into existence. Now,
Yeah, I would like to say something here.
Go
if you
ahead.
don't mind. Each point you mentioned, I can wait for you to finish. Just tell me what I. This is the first time I'm doing this, so feel free to make any points you like to make it better and beneficial. But I think if you're mentioning any point and you give it the whole explanation, I say my opinion, and then we'll move on to your next point.
Okay, so go ahead.
Is it good?
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of us understanding God, I believe if there is something to be independent, and if there is something to be the origin of the universe, which is like the vastness is unimaginable, and this like when you get small, when you dig deep, and when you get in, like you want to understand the molecules and atoms and stuff. You see parts in them, so it just goes in and goes at levels of smallness, can I say that? But in both sides, you can never reach the end. Like it's infinite, moving forward, and there are parts and parts and parts. And the origin of life, like they went back to 4 billion years ago, to Big Bang, as they say, and they haven't been able to figure out and give a clear explanation for the incident of Big Bang, or how the universe was originated, which is more complicated, as is one of the verses in the Quran says, if you think the creation of sama, what we call sky or heavens or the universe, let's say, that is more complicated. There's a verse in the Quran, I remember, when I find it, I put a link and I'll put it on the screen. But there's this verse that says that's complicated, and they haven't been able to reach it. And when you think of it, if there is a oneness without parts, without pieces, that is more complex than all these parts and rules and the universe and life and the small things and the big things and stuff, if there is that entity, they cannot be comprehended. It's in his nature that you cannot see it, you cannot comprehend it, you cannot get anywhere close to it. You can say, like, he's not the sun, he's not this book, he's not that cow, he's not that whatever, he's not whatever you might think, or you might presume, you might imagine, you might create. That's all your creation. He cannot be comprehended. And so when you say it's our job to find God, I think there is this verse in the Quran that says فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ. Like, I don't know how to translate it, but
turn your face to religion.
For the religion. Hanifan, which means
believing in one God.
Yeah, which was the religion of Abraham, which I think in the Quran it clearly indicates that Abraham was he was very special. He was the characteristics when you read the stories, he was very special, and he was blessed by this privilege that light of prophethood will be transferred.
Abraham is
in his
the
generations.
father of what in Quran says Ismail wa Ishaq, Ishmael,
Yaqub.
or Samuel as they call, and that Ishaq is Isaac. So Ishmael or Ismail and Isaac, and then as we believe, Ismail or Ismail, Ishmael, Ismail gave birth to his sons, was the father of his sons and sons that finally got to the Prophet Muhammad. But Isaac was the son of Yaqub, Ishaq wa Yaqub. And Yaqub is actually Israel or Jacob. And then we have Israelites or the sons of Jacob, who are actually the descendants. The grandson of Abraham was Jacob, and then the great grandson were the tribe, the 12 brothers of Israelites, or the 12 sons of Israel or Jacob.
Yeah, thank you. And it continues that فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا. Like, this is in your bones, it's baked into you that there's one God. And like, this religion is something that you were created based upon. Like, is it a good translation? فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا.
It's your
nature.
instinct, it's your instinctual response to this world. God has created you and put this instinct in you to find Him as one true God. But there's this one thing that you mentioned, that this is our purpose in this world, to find God. I oppose that. I don't think that is the purpose here.
No, I'm not saying this is the purpose. I'm saying we cannot comprehend God, and when something is not comprehensible, understandable, when you cannot grasp it, when you cannot be sure that what it is, like, you cannot define it in any sense. So it's like, it's not your duty because you cannot do it.
Okay.
So it has to be God's job to send a message so that He informs us however He likes to do it. It's His tradition, it's His choice, it's the way He wants to operate, it's His plan. But we cannot comprehend it, so it's His job to inform us. And there is this narration from Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam that says, I'm not gonna quote the Arabic version. I'm gonna leave it on the screen and in the link. But it says that God first asked the people who knew. It's not about prophethood or prophets. It's about the way God wants to operate. God didn't take the promise, didn't commit you. You refers to the people who don't know. Whatever they don't know, it's wide, it's not restricted. You don't know, and God gives this promise, or let's say He wants you to promise Him that you're gonna learn, okay? Because you don't know. But first, before He did that, He went to the people who knew, and how can I say this?
Give me the narration in Arabic or
I
something.
cannot. I want to say that God asked them to promise God that they would teach. So it's not that we have to know, it's that He has to teach. He has to inform us. He has to send His message. This is what I think to be true. That when you cannot comprehend something, which is the nature of God, it cannot be comprehended in any sense. So you cannot say what He isn't, but you cannot say what it is, what He is. So it's not your duty.
Okay,
so it's His duty. And there is this narration that I think somehow supports this claim, that it's the first person who promised to do this was the people who knew. So they have to inform you and make you aware that, okay, you cannot understand it, you cannot comprehend it, you cannot see it, but He is that one pure, without parts, without pieces, without anything that you can imagine. And he has a plan, and the plan is this, and you need to follow the plan and be his servant and take all the privileges. I think the first argument would be that when it's not comprehensible, it's not your duty.
Okay, so let me just give you one example that would probably make this a little more clear. Imagine there's a piece of paper here on this table, and on this piece of paper there's a note written like I need some books or whatever. And then you come to this room, you see this piece of paper on which there's a note on this table, you look at it, this is the same handwriting all over from beginning to end, the same pen, and it is consistent in every aspect. Then you look at it, you know that there has to be someone here before you. There had to be someone here before you. Someone who has written this text. Maybe he didn't write it here. Maybe he didn't bring it here. But there was someone who wrote this text. Now that someone, from the writing and its characteristics, you could figure out if that person is a righty or a lefty. You could even guess how powerful his fingers are. You could figure out the language that he speaks from the note. But you cannot guess or understand the color of his eyes. You cannot figure out if his hair is black or I don't know, blonde or whatever. You cannot understand some things, but there are some things you can understand. You can understand that there has to be someone who has written this note here. And there has to be someone who's put it here. And that person must know how to write. And that person must be able to speak this language, and so on and so forth. Now, it is not a perfect example, but it's the example of how we can look at the effect of something and realize that there has to be someone who has had this effect and his characteristics, his or her characteristics. Now, when we look at this universe, I say, if you look at this universe as an accidental or coincidental universe, I would tell you, if there is this planet on which there is a shape created from the multiple collisions of that planet with other planets and satellites and whatever, then it could be in the form of a cube. It's understandable, conceivable, and plausible. But if you see there's a 100-story building with all parts, like the windows and wiring and frame and pipes and so on and so forth, a complete 100-story building, is it possible that it was just created by accident, that these planets just crashed?
Yeah, but that understanding doesn't trigger any obligation for you. Like, if there's not a message, like, let's say you brought here to do something, and you haven't been informed of what it is that you're supposed to do. Is it our obligation to do something towards God if we don't have any message from Him?
That's another thing. You're not obligated to do anything towards God. You're not obligated to do anything for God. This is my view. God hasn't created us to do something for Him. He doesn't need anything. If He needed something, it would have meant He couldn't have been the creator. Now, this is one of those things. If the entity that has created this world was a needy one, an entity that needed something in this world, that entity wouldn't have been able to create this world out of nothing, because before this world was created, there was no world. So if He needed something when this world was not created, then He would have collapsed. He would have died. He would have gone out of existence. So this world is like you as a human being. You create something like this thread.
Yeah.
And you cannot be in need of this thread to survive.
When
to
I
go
say
on.
for him, I don't mean that he has a purpose
So he
or
has-
that he needs our help. But I'm saying that imagine we're assuming that there is a God, that he has a plan and he wants to do it through the prophets. This is the only message that we have received over the millennia, over the course of millennia. There were prophets and people who told us about God. This is clear. Like we have Judaism, we have Christianity, we have Islam. These are major branches of religion.
But the understanding is flawed. There are
Flawed?
none of them flawed.
Flawed, what
It
does
means
that mean?
not complete, incomplete, with
They're
mistakes.
incomplete.
No, I'm saying the understanding that we have, because none of those people, no prophets are alive now, and there's a reason for that. There are no prophets now, but we're getting to that later on. But for now, I'm saying what we understand, what most people understand of the message, and the reason for which those prophets were put on this earth, that is flawed. We think that they came here to tell us there's a God and you should worship that God and you should do these things because God wants you to do it in order for you to fulfill some purpose. But I don't think that's the case. God hasn't created us in order to just move along specific path in order to get to his good graces.
Well, I think there are, if like we're basing on the fact that the God that these prophets introduced is the one God and it's the same God, and like we're talking like this is true, I believe it's true. But before we get into it, before we get into any prophet, I think my point is that you're not obligated. If you hear, if I'm God, and I want to send you a message. If you hear from my prophet anything, like we're here, we're alive today. We know there's Christianity. We know that there's Islam. We know that there are Jewish people, other religions. So there's this concept of God. Like you heard it. Like when you have sex and you say, "My God," like it's everywhere. It's in our bones. This topic of God, and so you heard of it. You definitely have heard of it. So if I'm God and there's eternal punishment or reward or whatever, like responsibility, if there's any responsibility, if there's any mission to be carried through you, I would tell you that why didn't you did your research? Why didn't you do your homework? You should have done your research. You should have asked questions because I somehow told you this particular fact that I might exist, and you will be resurrected. You will be called someday to be held accountable for whatever you have done on this planet. I think the argument starts with the message that he sends and with the fitrat that he created us based upon.
I think you're getting way ahead of yourself in the discussion, and I disagree with almost all of it.
That's fine.
So let me give you the.
We can clarify our positions and we
Yeah.
can move on to the next question. But if you have anything you want to say, like feel free.
If we bring it way down to our level, we have children in this world. Now, when you have a child, you tell that child what to do and what not to do. That child might disobey you, might do it in another way.
And he's not responsible.
And why are you doing it? Why do you tell the child what to do and what not to do? Sometimes you even, fight with that child. Sometimes you punish that child. But it's all for that child to have a better life, to find the path to happiness and peace and prosperity. And I take this to the level of God and universe, and I think He's way kinder and better than us. If you look at Him in comparison to us, you would say that He hasn't sent us anyone to remind us we have this obligation to worship Him and live in a specific way in order to live by His code. He's not there to judge and see if you make a mistake. If you do something wrong, you're to be punished for it. He's
وَمَا
gonna
خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا.
ليعبدون.
لِيَعْبُدُون, yes.
Yeah, it means I didn't create them but to worship me. But we're gonna get to that.
Literally.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. That's one of those things, one of those ayahs you need to interpret correctly in order to understand what it means. But what I understand is that God has created us and He has sent us guidance, instructions, but not in the sense that if you do something different than His instructions, He's gonna punish you for it.
No. تُجْزَوْنَ مَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ. This is not His punishment. This is what you brought on yourself. This is the result of your action. Like, you see the hell that we live in, which is the result of our actions.
Yeah.
So this is like a metaphor of what you're going to send for yourself.
Okay, but you're mixing them up.
In believing that there will be a true, just word of Allah, of God, of that entity, and fearing that judgment, because you are responsible. You've been given this opportunity to be alive, and this privilege to be His servant, and to live forever with His blessings and have whatever you want. لَكُمْ فِيهَا مَا تَشْتَهِيهِ الْأَنفُسُ وَتَلَذُّ الْأَعْيُنُ. Like, basically it says whatever you want is in heaven. Like, we have like Hur al-Ain, like you can get married to as many people as you want. There are gardens.
You're moving way ahead of the discussion.
Yeah, no, it's not way ahead of the discussion. I believe it is on topic.
No, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in heaven and hell in that sense. And this is
hell and heaven is the we don't have access to hell and heaven to try to define it. We just have access to this text. But you're gonna feel the regret. But the regret itself is a form of hell. Like, if you truly, genuinely hate the result of your actions, and by extension, your actions, which you later understand that the thing that you have done were to just harm you, not others, you're gonna regret it, and that regret itself is gonna be hell. And imagine you lose the stars of wealth. Like, if those stars, thousands of millions of years of opportunities to be alive and to enjoy, to have whatever you want, and to grow towards that entity that we call binahayat. What do we have? Infinity. Like his infinite existence. You can move towards Him and become like Him, become more patient, become more knowledgeable, become more like you are Wajhullah, you are Khalifatullah, you are someone who represents God in some sense. Like, you're the closest entity to that one. So give me that. Like, if you don't have that, like, imagine you don't have that. You deny His existence, you deny His prophets, you deny His mission and His plan. Not what He wants or He needs, but what He wants you to do. Everything we talk about God is not that He needs us to help Him, because we have verses in the Quran that says why you don't help God. Like, does God need help? Of course not. But He's connecting to you, and you understand helping. You cannot help God, but you can help His mission. And He says, whatever I want to do, I will do it. But I am to do it through you, and you have this privilege to serve my purpose. Not my purpose that I needed, but the purpose that I chose for whatever reason that you cannot understand. I chose that purpose so that you follow it. It means so that you follow that purpose. And of course, when you recruit a child, there are restrictions. Like, he's going to kill himself, or she's going to kill herself if you don't stop him. So sometimes you raise your voice, you physically hold him, or sometimes even punish him, just to understand that this is for your own good. You don't understand the principles. I know I've lived longer. I was here. I'm not your creator, but in some sense, I brought you here. So there's this connection, but you don't know stuff. So I am to help you with these restrictions reach the level that you can do it yourself. That's when the adventure comes in, that you are now this person who knows the restrictions of God, who knows the usul, we say, the principles, the basic principles, and you can have your adventure. You can have your own adventure, and you can live a life, and you live a good life, and experiment whatever you want to experiment, but not before you know the instructions, your catalog, let's say, your description, what you are, what you're here for, what is the plan, when is the time, where is the where, what you should respect or what you shouldn't respect, what you should fear or shouldn't fear, what you should believe or don't believe. And you have to take sides, because there are people who say that there is no God, and there are people who say that there is a God. So there's this conflict, okay? And if I am to just put here, and people are killing each other on the name of religion, why should I believe in any of it? I don't see any reason, because the thing that we are seeing now today is just disastrous. It's catastrophic in so many senses. So I cannot believe in the God that these people are introducing. So that's my argument, that your wisdom, your power, your thinking cannot be obligated, cannot be called to any obligation towards God if He didn't send you His message first, if He didn't send His prophets first.
Let me ask you this. We have prophets, different parts of the world, different times, but would you say that in any given time there was at least one prophet for any group of people living in any part of the world? I mean, are there no groups of people who haven't had a prophet?
We actually have a verse in the Quran that says that if I sent you the path, the right path, now you're obligated. But if you haven't received anything, you are to be judged, and God will be the judge. Now, His criteria are unknown. Like, I don't know how He's going to judge any of us. I don't know we call criteria, we say mizan. What is the good word for mizan?
Yeah, criteria.
Like, what are the parameters by which you're gonna criticize or judge, do whatever you want to do with us? I don't know. I don't have access to that. There are things like, don't do transgression, don't do, and if you do it, if you ignore these things, you're gonna be held accountable. But there's this verse that, yeah, some people are not gonna hear it.
Okay.
Some people are not gonna receive the message because of the difference in the language, because of the difference in the the region, and yeah.
So we don't have to have that message.
We don't have to have that message?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
There are people who lived and live without receiving that message. It means you do not have to have that message in order to have a good life.
That's not.
So you could. That's not what?
That's not. It doesn't imply.
Why not?
Or it doesn't lead to that.
If you're saying there's a reason that God has to send His prophets, I'm saying there are people who haven't received any prophets, who haven't lived in the time of a prophet to which they had access. So it means not all of us have to have prophets. Not all of us have to have access to God through prophets.
Not that not all of us have to have that access, but that let me tell you this. God, if God is to do, if we're presuming that the prophets were carrying God's message, and God was to do it through miracles, like in the case of Moses, but do it with rationality as well. Like, we're going to do something with these rules that you have access to and you know of. Like, if you start hitting each other, you will die. If this sword is going to kill you. Like, there are rules that everybody knows, and we're playing with the same rules. It's a chord that we're playing. And there are always people in the Quran. It says, وَجَعَلْنَا لِلنَّبِيِّينَ عَدُوًّا مِنَ الْمُجْرِمِينَ. I'm gonna leave the verse. وَجَعَلْنَا لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ عَدُوًّا مِنَ الْمُجْرِمِينَ.
I think, I'm not sure, but yeah, something like that.
There is all the prophets. We did it. We put enemies for the prophets from the criminals. We sent those criminals to the prophets.
This is
my interpretation. Obviously, everything I say is my interpretation.
No. I'm
not saying Islam says this, or I'm Islam's representative in any sense. But I'm just saying there is this verse in the Quran that says God has a plan, and He's to do it through you with the same rules that you know of. He's going to teach you some other rules. He'll give you His privileges. He's going to teach you stuff that you couldn't otherwise learn. But you're going to do it yourself. This is your job now. Okay, I'm going to give you some ammunition. I'm going to give you some help. But this is what you should do, and this is your job. So if someone doesn't allow the Prophet to send his message elsewhere, we have this conflicts everywhere. Like the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had many wars, and what we call qazwe, and what is the other term? Basically, there are small wars and there are bigger wars.
Qazwa is a war in which the Holy Prophet Muhammad participated directly. If he was in the war, it was called a Ghazwa. And other than that, I don't recall the exact term, but what we're discussing here should be more
I'm saying there's this conflict, and if they don't let the Prophet send his message, he's not gonna. It won't happen, and they're going to be responsible. They're going to be held accountable for not letting the Prophet do it. And if there's any transgression after what you have done to the Prophet, not letting him send his message, if people in other countries, which the Prophet could have access to, if they don't receive the message, you, the kafir, the disbeliever, the person who opposes the Prophet and doesn't let him do his mission, you're going to be held accountable for somehow. I can't say this is my understanding, that you're responsible for that. You did this. This is the result of your action, that they don't know this. And yeah, they're going to be, I think they're going to be responsible for the results of their actions, whatever they are.
The entity we call Creator has created this world and has put us here with Him not needing to create this world, and with us being non-existent, not needing to come into this world. So He's done this like granting us favor.
Yeah, as a favor.
To come to existence. And that whole thing, all of it being a favor is the starting point. It's to be something good and beautiful. And then it's like you want to go to another place, and there are various routes you could take in order to get there. Now, one of them is very long. One of them is like a road with no asphalt, and it's very bumpy, and you're gonna be hurt in the middle of the road. One of them, you cannot take your car and you have to walk a long time, and there are animals there and they might hurt you. There are these roads, but there is one specific road. It's short and clean and beautiful, and you can take your car and get there in a few minutes, and you could have a good trip, fun, peaceful, good trip. So I will provide this map that you could use in order to get there. But if you don't use it, you go through other ways, other roads. You're doing it at your own risk. There is the map. You could take it, but you go there, an animal might hurt you. A lion might just kill you. I'm not punishing you for not going through the road I designated. It's just dangerous. You might get lost. You might get there, but it might be it might take you a lot longer. It might be a lot later than the time it would have actually taken you to get there. So I give you this map to make it easier for you. And when I'm giving you this map, I'm considering not just you, but like billions of people who would have access to this map. So I should write everything down in this map. I should show you the way in a specific way that would be comprehensible, understandable to all other people who are benefiting from this map. So I'm not going to put some details into it. I'm going to show you the road. Sometimes there's a better way. Along the way, one part of it, there's a shortcut. But if I show you the shortcut in this map, because of the complexities of that specific part of the map, many people might get lost. So I don't do it. It takes a little longer, even with this map, it takes a little longer in that specific part of it, but it's because a lot of people are to benefit from it. And if I show you the exact route that is to be taken, the most straight, the shortest route, then some people might get lost. And in some other parts, I tell you to go from here to there. And I don't actually want you to get there. The purpose is something else. But I know that if I tell you this in this specific language, you're going to understand it and you're going to get there. So I don't tell you the whole thing. I tell you the part that you need in order to get from where you are to your destination in the most efficient way for the most people. Okay? I believe the religion to be something like this. If there's a creator, he has given us his message, but that message is not for us to worship him or to do something specific as the purpose of life. We are put in this world to live a good life.
I actually believe in that, and I have a good explanation for that.
Okay, we're going to get to that, but I believe...
I'm saying what we say is the same.
Okay,
but
but this path and this map start at the beginning of the human life on earth when human beings had this understanding. And the story in Quran begins with Adam, and in other books like the Torah and Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, with Adam as the first prophet. But they say he wasn't the first human being. And it's comprehensible to me. It's very obvious because the first human beings on this planet, they were so primitive and they had such basic needs they couldn't have overcome easily, so that they didn't need a religion because they were busy with more important stuff like surviving, realizing that you need food, you need to multiply, you need to do these things. So the survival instinct came first, and
so
then...
you say Adam wasn't the first person?
I think it is not something that could be denied, that the first human beings on this planet could not be the human beings that we see today. It would have been more primitive, the human beings in the beginning, and it's not a contradiction to say that those human beings did not have a prophet. They didn't need a prophet because they had such basic needs to get to and satisfy, then they wouldn't have gotten even the comprehension for a higher existence and so on. But we're getting off topic. So God gave us this map throughout history, and it get more detailed and more complete throughout the way till it got to the Holy Prophet Muhammad, the last prophet. And then it continued through Imams for a reason. This had a reason. And we're going to get to that. It's a logical reason. It's a reasonable explanation for everything that's happened. And if you stray from that path, then you're going to see that there would be a contradiction between sending prophets and then ending it in Jesus or Moses or whoever, and then not having anything else for the rest of the road, and then sending messages with no explanation that would make it not clearer for human beings to know right from wrong. And that is the whole thing, that you live a better life here. Now we have this, that if you do it, if you do everything that is mentioned in a true religion, you're going to have a peaceful, fulfilling life in this world. Now, everything that is talked about in all religions, the other world, and what God wants you to do in order to have a better life in the other world is actually about explaining it in a language that would make everyone understand that they're supposed to do this and they're not supposed to do that in order to have a good life. But it's not about leaving this world and doing everything for another world. I don't believe that to be the case. So we have
believe
God
it because if you're to sacrifice your whole life for this mission and bring peace into this pure dirt that these people have created, you have to have a higher purpose. And I'm not saying that that other purpose is the world after. I'm just saying that there has to be a just word, a day of judgment, a day that justice will be manifested in the fullest sense possible.
Okay, so
But if you don't have that other purpose, are you willing to kill yourself for the sake of religion? How do you justify all these words? The Prophet asked these people to come to these words, and he was to tell them that don't go away. You're going to be alive in the world after. You're going to be blessed by God's blessing. You're going to be alive and have a better life, the best kind of life, because you died for this purpose, to let everybody know, to bring them under this flag of peace and one word of God and Allah and His prophets and the chosen people. So I believe, this is again my interpretation, everything is our personal interpretations. I believe that you cannot say, okay, we're here to live a good life here. That hasn't happened. Like if that was the case, if that was the purpose, God failed. Prophets have failed to create that good life, because there were always contradictions and they were always defeated. And I think we talked about God enough. And now to the question that why Islam, why Shia, why the religion that you picked? Give us a summary.
Well, to summarize it all, as you mentioned, I would say that God sent us people to help us along the way. And those people were the prophets that He appointed Himself and told them what to do and what to say and how to say it. And they were enough for people of their time, and they could help them. They were alive amongst those people. We have this in Quran that says, لو كان في الأرض ملائكة يمشون مطمئنين لنزلنا عليهم من السماء ملكا رسولا. It means that if there were angels walking on earth, living on earth, I would have sent them an angel to guide them. And this is another point we're going to discuss later on, that the person that helps people find the path has to be one walking in the same path with them.
To be one of them, playing with the same rules.
Yes. Now,
and it makes you more humble, I think.
It is, and that's actually what got Satan, or Shaitan, Iblis, or Lucifer, as we say, the devil. That's what got him, because he couldn't accept to be humbled against anyone, because God told him to. He said, I would be humble in front of you. I would do as you tell me, but I wouldn't do it for anyone else, even if you tell me to do it. So that is the point here, that I would appoint someone and you have to follow that someone, even if that's someone exactly like you. But we're going to get to that. So God has sent us prophets, and He gave them a message. Some of them had books with them, sayings that God gave them or told them to say and present, but their message has been changed and betrayed throughout history. And even Christians and Jews themselves know that the books that they have, the Old Testament and the New Testament, they're not books that were sent by God. So we have no access to them. And if human beings get to a point in which map itself would suffice and there would be no need for a guide to read the map and tell them how to follow it, then that map should be trustworthy and it should be final. It should be a version that anyone can find the way, at least with its help, relying on it. I'm not saying it would be I'm not saying it should be 100% what human beings could rely on, but it should be 100% itself. It should be 100% reliable itself. And at the end of the line, there should be one after whom there would be no prophet. It could go on up until a point, but when you get to that point, it should be the most complete version. And when you have that, well, you cannot go to any other version. And we believe that the version that is most complete is the version of religion that was presented by the Prophet Muhammad, because he was the last of them. He was the last prophet. And I use the word version here deliberately, on purpose, because I believe they're all the same. Yeah. Some are more complete, some less, and some cover a greater area, some smaller. But in the end, the message is the same, just like the goal is the same, the destination is the same, and the routes differ, the level of details presented in the map differ, but destination is the same. So the Holy Prophet Muhammad is the last of them. And I'm not saying that because of the history alone. Now, history is a testament to this. And we have these texts and these things that could help us realize he was the last prophet. But when I look at Quran and I look at what we have today as human beings in a connected world in which we have access to information from almost all corners of this globe, this earth, we would see that there's no prophets, no real prophets living amongst us today. So there must be one at the end of the road of those prophets, and there must be a guide for us. And when I look at this Quran and the rest of the books that are out there we have access to, and I read them, I see that it fits my understanding of religion, that it is not in conflict with itself. The basics, the premise based on which this whole religion is built makes sense. And that is the point I want to emphasize on here. And that is the whole thing for me. That prophets were sent to human beings up until a point at which the minds of human beings had grown to a level that could understand the most complicated messages they needed to understand in order to find their own path. And
you mean without miracles and
yes, and without someone who would
rationality?
Yes, and without someone who would directly explain everything to them, they wouldn't get 100% of what they need. They might get a very small portion, but that small portion covers the most important areas they need, and it isn't in conflict with itself, because I have looked at many different religions, and the mainstream religions is Judaism and Christianity. And when I looked at them, I see that there are these flaws in their narratives, and there are these points of contradiction that you cannot solve. And when you go to their clerics and clergymen and their scholars of religious veracity and variety, you see that their explanations, descriptions, and the road that they decrypt and encrypt for us, the road that they depict for us, it isn't It isn't not unclear, not clear, but it isn't something that could be relied upon. It isn't something that could be even considered constant or reasonable. So I say it couldn't be it. It couldn't be that final version. But when I go to the premises of Islam and what it tells us about God, I see that everything from start to finish isn't in contradiction and in conflict with itself. And that is what does it for me. Now, we have to get to those premises, to those foundations, and we are going to get to them, but we see this world, we understand this world through the lens of our perception, our minds. And this is what we have to rely on in order to get a better understanding of everything that is going on here and everything we're supposed to be doing and everything that is good for us. And what I see here based on the logic that I can muster up is that this is the last one. And I'm going to get to the details of that. And then Shiism. Because again, when I enter Islam, I accept it based on the foundations that I accepted God and prophets and the Holy Prophet. So when I go to other branches like Sunnism and Wahhabism and whatnot, I see that they have forgotten those foundations or those foundational elements based on which they have built the belief of Islam. And that tells me that they cannot be right. Because again, you get to a point, you say, for instance, after the Holy Prophet came, there was a caliph like Abu Bakr, and then came Umar and Osman, and then came Imam Ali. And they say because Abu Bakr was a follower or a disciple, those followers who lived and became Muslim in the time of the Holy Prophet himself, because he was one of them, he was accepted as a caliph or the successor of the Holy Prophet. But then I say, okay, so we believe he's the one to follow because he is one of the Holy Prophet's disciples. Now, his words and his actions were in contradictions with themselves and with those of other disciples of the Holy Prophet. So if I am to follow this person because he's a disciple of the Holy Prophet and there's another disciple of the Holy Prophet who says the exact opposite of what he's saying, then I'm left with like the toss of a coin.
Yeah.
I don't know which one to follow. This is contradiction. So there's no righteous path. There's no right and there is no reliable path. So again, I'm lost. And if it is to guide me, if it is to be a map to show me to the destination I'm looking to go to, then this couldn't be the way. And then I go to the Holy Prophet himself. I believe that he has to make no mistakes. And then I see that he has said this repeatedly throughout his life, that the person after me should be Ali. And the Sunnis and Wahhabis all have these narrations or hadiths in their books.
Countless narratives.
Yeah, that point to Imam Ali being the successor of the Holy Prophet. So if you have this person who doesn't make mistakes, based on our beliefs, that again comes from logic. It doesn't come from narrations. It doesn't come from what someone says or said. It comes from logic that he has to
that
make.
part, but yeah, go on.
Okay, we can talk about that later on. But when we have this person saying these things and it is repeated over and over and over again, up to a degree in which there's no doubt that he has said this many, many times, that he is my successor, he's going to be the one who is to lead your community after I go from this earth to whatever, to wherever, then you cannot leave that person and go to another person. And there's the reason that there has to be a successor and it has to continue up to a certain point. And that reason is the same reason we need prophets. And we're going to get to that in another discussion as well.
No, thank you. That was very good. And my understanding of, I'm going to answer the same question, why Islam, why Shiism? My understanding is that when you enter Islam, when you accept Islam, which means acceptance and
Surrender
surrender, yeah, let's,
to the will of God.
yeah, and there are verses in the Quran that says, Atiullah wa atiur Rasul wa ulil amri minkum. Like, say yes to God, worship God. Ati'u, how can I translate it? Like, do whatever He says.
Obey.
Obey God and obey the Prophet and obey the people who are responsible on you and for you. And after the Prophet, everything from now, like if you accept Islam, now it's what God says, not my logic. It's, you have to be logical in every aspect of your life. Like, for example, the authenticity of the Quran. If Quran is tainted, is not properly preserved, it's not to be trusted. The Prophet himself, if he's fallible, like I can understand in his personal relationship with God, he makes some minor errors or mistakes or whatever. Let's call it even sin. I don't care. But in relationship to me, if you say he's the best of you and he's my appointed person and you're going to trust him, I'm going to say yes, okay. If you say he's the best of us, if I accept God and he says the Prophet is the best of you, I'm going to say yes, even if to some degree he's not infallible. Like we're going to talk about infallible and fallible in a separate video, but the idea that God sends prophets, people like you, that you should follow, is repeated over and over and over again throughout millennia. Like, the first message was through a prophet, and the last message was through a prophet. There were sometimes books, but there were always prophets. Even like, you can't have a book without a prophet. Let's put it this way. And the book is always to carry different meanings, to be ambiguous. We have a verse in the Quran that says, "Minhu ayatun muhkamat wa ukhara mutashabihat." There are the verses that are definite, that are clear, and there are the verses that are mutashabih, which means they can carry different meanings. And not saying because there are those verses you have to be, there has to be an interpreter, but the fact that God's tradition, the way He wanted to operate, was to send a message. And interestingly, the story that you started reading was about Harun and Musa. And the first thing that he asked God when he was appointed was to ask him to give this privilege of carrying this message, being responsible for such a huge and honorable thing, to one of his own, one of his family, and specifically his brother. And he was to be his successor, his caliph, his secretary, his prime minister, whatever term you want to call it, political or non-political. But he was to do the same thing. And it doesn't matter their position to God. For us, like Moses is apparently better than Harun in rank, but when it comes to us, we need to follow the word of Harun as well as we need to follow the word of Moses. Like he was what we call ulul azm. We have prophets that were, there's this verse in the Quran that says about Adam that وَلَمْ نَجِدْ لَهُ عَزْمًا, we didn't find any determination in him. Like, is it a good translation? Like, he wasn't determined and he wasn't like established, or let's say he wasn't, I don't know how to translate it.
Well, the wording means what you're saying.
Determination.
The will and determination, will would be the better translation. But we interpret it in a different way. We say those are the prophets that had their own religions. Some prophets just came to guide people, but they were actually promoting the religion brought upon by another prophet. So like Moses comes, he brings this Judaism belief system, this religion of Judaism, and other prophets come to promote this religion amongst people. So those who have their own religion and they promote their own religions, they are ulul azm, as you mentioned, and others who do not do this, who do not have this.
And there's this thing that keeps happening in the Quran, that when the next prophet comes, the followers of the previous prophet would be against him. Like, I can understand why, because if there is a plan and the prophets are going to die like every single one of us, and there has to be a prophet to carry the same responsibility, then why wouldn't you follow the same chain and the same lineage? Like, it's the same message with some differences, because it's God's plan to make it just a little complicated so he can test you a little more. لِيُمَحِّصَ اللَّهُ مَا فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ, so that he can distinguish between the ones that are genuine in their beliefs.
Okay, let me give you an example that would clarify this point. I was trying to help my daughter with her homework, and I was trying to tell her how to write down a specific word. And I told her, if you want to write, for instance, madrasa, a word in Farsi, you have to write it like this. And then she told me that no, I shouldn't. My mom told me to do it this way. Now, this is a perfect example of this situation. Now, I know what I'm saying. Her mother knows what she's saying, and she has tried to help her in a specific way. I'm trying to do it in another way, but these are not in conflict with one another. In a specific word that you're doing it right now, it would be better to do it this way, but the mind doesn't comprehend it. It says, if I am to follow the instructions of my mother in order to get it and do it right, so I have to do it, and if anyone says anything in contradiction with that, I'm not going to follow. Now, the mind of the child cannot comprehend that these are the same message in different clothings. So the same is true for followers of different prophets. You have your prophet and you think, okay, whatever he said is final, but he told you that there's a God, and God sends you messages through prophets in order for you to grow up and become a better human being. But then you have to figure it out for yourself, that the next prophet, if it could be trusted that this person is the next prophet, if you understand this, then you have to convert to his religion. If it's a different religion, or you have to
support his religion,
and you have to do whatever he says, basically.
Because it's God. Like, you cannot say, I want to stick to my prophet. Like, who the hell are you to decide which prophet you want to stick to? It's God who tells you what to do, and you just here to worship God and say yes to and accept what he says. This is my interpretation of religion. Like, God, whatever he says, like, I don't get to say what he has to say. I don't want to have a democracy. I want God to guide us. So if he says you have to follow this, you have to follow the prophet. And there's no contradiction in Islam about Muhammad, right? There's no contradiction in Islam that he was the prophet of Islam.
Yeah,
he was
this
well
part
accepted. Like, you find Jewish people, Christians that say Muhammad got it wrong. He didn't say Jesus was God, and so this is clear indication that he wasn't the prophet. There are many arguments that the prophet, if you're looking from outside of the story, you can debate this. But when you enter Islam and you accept Islam, it's clear that you should follow God, and the prophet is the prophet, so you have to follow him as well. But after him, there was this contradiction between the companions of the prophet. So what should we do? Like, there's no unanimous decision.
Okay, when you say the word companion, let me just get one word, because in ancient times, the word companion meant wife or spouse, but we say it as the disciple.
Yeah, disciple.
Disciple is a havari. For Jesus, he had 12 disciples. Those followers, 12 followers that were closest to him. But for the Holy Prophet, it's a wider term. It's not a specific number of people who are like strictly following him wherever he went or whatever, but a bigger group of people who lived in his time, who were Muslims when he was alive or converted to Islam because of his message. And afterwards, there were these people who became Muslims, but not because they saw the Holy Prophet and turned to Islam or converted to Islam, but because they got the message from someone else, through someone else. So those who got the message directly from the Holy Prophet, we call them Sahabe or
disciples, or the
yeah.
companions,
or whatever. Yeah.
we can say companion to the family. Yes, of course. Thank you for clarifying this. And as I said, there's this contradiction that it seems that a few people would like to address and talk about, which I think the whole point of being a Muslim, I think, because you are to find what's right and what's wrong. And if you accept that this is the word of God, this is the pure knowledge, this is the straight path, you need to study it, you need to practice it, you need to take sides. Like, there is going to be contradiction between the ones that are out of Islam. There are going to be people, there are always people who deny God and His plan and His mission. There are always those people. So they wouldn't let you get the message out to the people who are not biased, who are not opposing against anything for no reason or for their wishes and for their desires. So there is this contradiction. And when you look at the history, as you said in your explanation, I did a heavy research on this from Sunnis books, okay, their books, and my logic says if someone who's against me narrates or says something that helps me, that's to be more trusted than the narratives of our own. Like, you find narratives in
the compliments of the enemy. It's like something in that arena.
If
the
my
compliments
enemy
of the enemy.
approves me, like, I'm gonna base my argument on your word, because, and you see this in Sunnis books, that from the very, very beginning of the introduction of Islam, the first time that God said to the Prophet, "Anzir ashiratak al-aqrabin," go warn to your closest people, to the people that are close to you, your family. He said, whoever of you says yes to me now is going to be my caliph, is going to be my successor, my, what did you say for Wazir?
You
are going to be after me, you are going to be carrying the same message and the same responsibility. And Ali was the person who said yes 3 times. And from that point, from the very beginning, because he was the first to say yes to Islam after Khadija, which was the Prophet's wife. Ali was the first person. He was raised by the Prophet. He was his private student. And these are in their books, that he was the first person, that he was taught. He was to learn everything from the Prophet directly. And he was at every war. He never ran away from any war. He was, and there are many occasions, like the Prophet called him his brother. The only person who the Prophet called his brother was Ali. And he closed all the, like they built these mosques in the Medina, and the houses were around the mosque, and each person, each family had a door that would open to the mosque, and they were all open. And it was revelated to the Prophet that you need to close all doors except except your door and Ali's door, which Fatima and Hassan and Hussein were in that home too. So only 2 doors have to be opened from now on. So what does that mean? Like, many verses in the Quran that the Prophet specifically, like even Ahl Sunnah say that you have the Quran and you have the Sunnat. You need to follow the Quran and the Sunnat, which means the things that the Prophet did or
his
said.
traditions.
His traditions, whatever he did, whatever interpretation he had about the Quran, we use that history, we use those narrations to interpret the Quran better and to understand it better. Like, the Quran is sufficient, definitely has meanings that can guide you throughout your life, but to know where to land, what to do exactly, who to follow, this is the point, I think, because the person who's in charge of the entire planet Earth is the most important person. Like, if you put that aside, if you put that person aside, you're going to damage everyone. If you don't do your salat, if you don't do your prayers, you're just going to harm yourself. But if you put the Prophet aside, you're gonna harm everyone. This is my understanding. So that person, if they're to carry the message, the interpretation, the understanding, even the things in the wealth of Muslim community, which is to be taqsim, how can I say? Distributed.
Divvied up or distributed.
Distributed among Muslim people with, we call sawa in the Quran, that it has to be equally distributed among Muslim community. This is the most important contradiction, that people, the wealth on the planet is not distributed properly and equally. So one of the responsibilities that they had was to distribute this properly, which is a very important thing.
You're getting into the details that are
because details are important.
They are in need of clarification, because yes, that possessions of the Islamic government had to be distributed amongst Muslims equally, but there's a point.
And even the people who are in under the flag of Islam, we call people who are Muslim and people that are in ahd of Islam, which means Jewish people, Christians, the people who are not against Islam openly and honestly, but just they don't want to be Muslims, but they're inside that community. There is peace in Muslim communities. The first person who had this contract with Jewish people was the Prophet.
Yes, but the point I wanted to make is that those taxes, Islamic taxes that you get from people based on the rulings of Islam, based on Islamic jurisprudence, you get it from Muslims, and you put it in that treasury that gathers all of it. We call this Baytul Mal. That has to be distributed, but the fruits of one's labor is their own. Ownership, that is respected. That is, you could work, you could become a rich person. It's all very respected and accepted in Islam, and no one has the power to get anything from you against your will. It is prescribed that it would be a good thing if you help others. You give to them, and there is nothing more valuable than this, helping others in need. If you see someone who doesn't have anything to eat, anything to wear, anywhere to live, you help them. You don't have to do it, but it would be really, really good if you did. And this is the responsibility of the government, to take care of those people who have problems, disabilities, and reasons for not being able to, orphans who've lost their parents and cannot live properly. So the government helps them. But if you're capable and you have a mind for business, for instance, and you do business and you become rich, it is accepted, and it's a very good thing. It's praised for ordinary people to do their best to become rich and powerful. It's okay, and it's accepted and respected.
I don't necessarily agree with that part. That it is recommended to become powerful or rich. I don't know that. If you say, I'm going to take it, I'm going to assume that it's your personal interpretation, because I've seen verses that would indicate otherwise. But we'll get into that later. Not that being rich is bad, but that it's not the point, and you don't need it.
That's
course. What I believe. You don't need it.
No. الذين يكنزون الذهب والفضة ولا ينفقونها في سبيل الله. It says if you're amassing gold and silver, which means wealth. If you're gathering wealth and you're not giving it away for God, which means you're not helping poor people with those amassed gold and silver and whatever, then you're not a good person. And there are very bad descriptions of those people who do such a thing, but it says you should do it. And to my belief and my interpretation, it is actually in our narrations that you should try your very best. Imam Ali has this
It's one of the signs of wise people.
Imam Ali says live. This is one of those. There are many famous quotes and famous sayings that are repeated and cited and recited in Western culture that are actually translations of our narrations. Like this one, that it says, Imam Ali says, live your life for this world as if you're going to live forever. For the next one, as if you're going to die in the next moment. So you do your best in this world to, do business and
build an empire
work
that will
and
last
build-
forever.
Yeah, as if you're not gonna die ever. But remember,
That's a good one.
being bad, doing bad things, hurting others, lying, cheating, doing bad things, that's the thing that would destroy your life. In the next one, that's the map that I was talking about in our previous discussions, that don't do those, but do your best to be good, but be as good as you can. Have everything in this life. Enjoy your life. Even God tells Holy Prophet, which is actually a message to the whole world, why are you not enjoying yourself and benefiting from those pure things that God has given you in this world? God has given you the beauty of your spouse or of the opposite sex. God has given you fine food, delicious food, drinks that are really enjoyable. Go out, enjoy
easy.
them. Yeah, have fun. You are here to live and lead a good life. So go and do it. Just don't forget that this isn't the purpose. You're not here just to eat and then sleep and then sleep with others and then drink and so on and so forth. But do not take those
You're
things
allowed.
away from yourself. God has created this world for you to benefit from.
Definitely.
So just
There's
go out
this
there and
narrative
enjoy
that
it.
says that 1/4 of your time has to be to please yourself, so that you can do the hard things that you're supposed to do, because you need that joy to be able to
Be a productive member of the
yeah,
society.
definitely. And there is this quote in the Quran that says, "Inna kathiran min al-ahbar wal-ruhban."
يجتنبون
It says that يَصُدُّونَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. It says that there are people, scholars and followers and advocates of a religion, أحبار والرهبان, which means أحبار for Jews.
No. Ruhban is
For Jews, and
Jews,
أحبار
for Christians.
For Christians, which is حباري. Yeah.
Ahbar actually.
أحبار, yeah, أحبار والرهبان. And so there is this thing that, so you can't trust all the scholars. They are to be questioned, their authenticity, their we put that aside.
Sorry, I think I got it backwards, because Ka'b al-Ahbar was actually a Jew. So I think Ahbar is for Jews,
Yeah,
and
Ruhban
Ruhban
for Christians.
for
Yeah,
Christians, Rahib Haye
Yeah,
Masihi.
Rahib, yeah, definitely. So there's this thing that scholars get it wrong, and they presume that they're right, and people trust the scholars because they're quoting the religion, and they give the credit from the religion, and so they trust, and they give their wealth to them, and they would betray their wealth, and they would keep them from worshiping God. They would do things that would oppose the purpose of God, that would be against it in some sense. So we put them aside. We cannot trust them. There has to be the Prophet himself. And there's this question, did he appoint someone after himself? Now, this is where the story gets interesting, because in the Quran you see many indications that the thing that God promised his prophets wasn't money, wasn't wealth, wasn't kingdom, wasn't to be the highest authority like Solomon. He was the king. He was he owned
The most powerful
everything.
person
Not
on
only
earth.
human, but jinn, which is the other creature, like the kind of
Genies.
powers that genies, yeah, the kind of power that we've never experienced, like genies, like they were under his obligation and they were in his territory, and he would use these other creatures to send the message out and to establish the word of God. So, but that's not the purpose, because there were other prophets, and the kingdom wasn't the end of it. It was the message. So you see that these people, prophets, don't ask for wealth, don't ask for money, because they're going to leave this planet and the world after, apparently, from the description of Quran, we don't have money there. We leave all things behind, and we just, us with the things that we've done. So they want these privileges. these positions, these, let's say, I don't know how to say it in another way, how to put it in another way, but privilege. I like this word to indicate what I mean. Yeah, we switched cameras. We ran out of the memory card, so I'm gonna finish my conversation, and it's actually midnight, so we're gonna finish it. I was saying that, so there's this sign that it's not gonna end. There were prophets after prophets, there were people after people. The message was sent through each and every one of them, and they were to leave a legacy that somebody else was responsible for. We have the story of Jesus, that he had 12 trusted people. Disciples. 12 disciples. Jesus had these people, and Moses had these people. The first thing he asked was to have this privilege. And Abraham, which was the most important prophet in the Quran, he had this religion that was so pure. He would trust God with his life. He would even kill his son. He would sacrifice everything for God. And so he became imam in the verse that I'm going to put on the screen. And the first thing he asked was can you give this to my descendants, to my sons? And God says, no, we're not going to give it to the people who do transgressions or who put things out of their place, out of their actual place. Let's say zalim, we can interpret it in different ways, but I think the general meaning was this is only for you.
Wrongdoers.
Yeah,
people
wrongdoers, yeah. And it's not going to be for everyone. Even if they're prophets, they're not going to be imam, let's say. So they want these privileges, and they care about their family doing the same thing that they were doing. And Prophet actually, we have some narratives that the Prophet explicitly told his disciples, to follow his family after him. Many quotes, countless numbers that the Prophet said that Fatima, which was his only daughter, is appointed by God to be this authority among you, that if she gets angry at anyone, I'm going to get angry at them, and if I get angry at anyone, I'm going to put it on the screen, God will get angry at them. So don't mess with her. Like, don't follow whatever she says. And we're going to talk about Fatima alayhi salam and her role in Islam, and the fact that she was Abiha, that she was Sayyidatun Nisa al-Alameen, the best woman of all time according to the Prophet. We were talking about the story within the confines of the Islam, like where we're in Islam and where we're hearing things from the Prophet and we're following his orders. And he says, Ali is my wasi. Ali to me is like Harun to Musa. And the only difference is that he's not a prophet, so he doesn't have that title. But he has the title that Abraham had, which is Imam, because he's so special. And he said it to Fatima that لِكَرَامَةِ اللَّهِ إِيَّاكَ زَوَّجَكَ مَنْ هُوَ أَقْدَمُهُمْ سِلْمًا وَأَكْثَرُهُمْ عِلْمًا. Because you were such a good person, and this is my interpretation, because God wanted to give you his blessings, he married you to the person who was the first to accept Islam and who's the most knowledgeable among these people. Like, after me, he knows everything. He's to interpret it. He's to carry the message. You're not going to be divided because he's among you and he's going to take care of you. And they say that Abu Bakr was unanimous, but there are narratives that Ali and Fatima were against this decision, and some of the companions, some of the disciples. For 6 months, Ali didn't say yes to Abu Bakr the first thing. He was against it for 6 months. And so there's this contradiction. And there are two things that happened before the Prophet demised, which is the incident of Qadir Khum, which The Prophet said, "Alastu awla bil mu'minina min anfusihim?" Am I not the person who's the highest in rank, who's more prioritized? Even when I say you should do something, even you cannot trump it. Like I trump everything, everyone. I'm the first. I'm the most important person. Like you need to say yes to me. Am I not this person? And they would say, yes, you are that person. And he would say, "Man kuntu mawla fahadha aliyun mawla." Whoever I'm responsible for, Ali's gonna be the same to them. Like forget the titles, Nabi, Rasul, Wasi, Imam. Forget that title. This is the job, okay? And if you argue the wording, let's say Wali means friend or whatever, like if you deny the existence of the sun when it's day, fine. But there is this person called Hassan ibn Sabit, which was we call sha'ir. What is the word?
Poet.
Poet. He was a poet, and he started after the incident of Ghadir Khum. He started writing he started saying some poems, which clearly, like explicitly, says that this is not friendship, ladies and gentlemen. This is imamat. This is khilafat. This is wizarat. This is wisayat. This is the exact same thing, the relationship that we had with the Prophet. He's going to fulfill that obligation and that position. And this other incident, I think it was before Ghadir Khum, 2 years before Ghadir Khum, that they went to this war called Khaybar. And the first day, Prophet sent Abu Bakr, the first caliph, to conquer. And he ran away, according to their books. Whatever narrative I'm talking about, and I'm quoting here, are from Sunni's books. Okay? Mm-hmm. I'm not quoting Shia, I'm not narrating from Shia. And he said, the next day he sent Omar. And Omar went there, and the detail is incredible. He came back, he ran away, and he was blaming, he was pointing his finger on others. Like, well, why did you run away? And they were saying, you were the first that ran away. And this is not in my book, it's not in our books, it's in their books. But anyway, and he said, tomorrow I'm going to introduce this person who is not farrar, we say, who doesn't run away, but who's karrar, who keeps doing it, who's gonna deliver this thing. And Ali had this pain in his eyes, and he came to the Prophet and he said, what is with you? And he said, Alhamdulillah, waja'un ba'aini, my eyes hurt. And he did something that it would make him better, and then he took the flag and then he conquered the territory of Khaybar, which was for Jews, and they had this deal after this incident that this land called Fadak was given to the Prophet, and Prophet had a deal with Jews that half of it is going to be for you and half of it is going to be for us. And this verse came down, Ati zal qurba haqqah, zal qurba, which means the family of the Prophet. Give your family their right. Now just know this, that the mother of Fatima was the richest woman among Arabs, okay, the Prophet's wife. And the Prophet used all her wealth to support the community of Muslims. Like they were rough times, and so they needed money, and so nothing was for Fatima. Like they were only people, Ali and Fatima were the only people who didn't have slaves, who didn't have any people to help them, and who didn't receive anything, because the Prophet knew that they're not going to lose their faith. So the money was to be to the people that had bigger problems, had more families, had children, orphans. They would sacrifice. This is narrated in Sunni's books, that they didn't have these things. And many others had these things. When they conquer some territory, they would slave the people of that territory. So take as slaves. So these people didn't have it. The only thing that Prophet gave as a gift, as an obligation, as something that the verse told him to do, was to give Fatima this land, which wouldn't compensate, or which wouldn't be in like the even a fraction of Khadija's wealth, which was her mother. Anyway, we're not going to compare the money. We're not going to do these things. But the thing is, it was hers. She owned it. It wasn't a heritage. She didn't inherit that from his father. But one of the contradictions happened on this land, because this land would give them 30,000 dinars per year. It would be sufficient for an entire city. It was a very productive land, and it would give them power. The entire Bani Hashim, Ali, Fatima, and their family, they would have this. And so one of the first things, after the Prophet demised, they were, Ali and Fatima, they were trying to...
You're getting way
No, I'm not getting. Just bear with me for 5 minutes. The Prophet was died. This is the point of contradiction. This is the point of contradiction. It's not clear in the broken pages of history what exactly happened. So we only have access so much to the history, to the story back then. So every point is beneficial to clarify the whole thing.
No, I'm saying
Fadak was the point of contradiction. No, I'm done. These were two quotes that I wanted to say. Ghadir Khom and the incident of Khaybar, which Prophet again said that Ali was Harun to Musa. Ali is like Harun to Musa. Ali to me is like Harun to Musa.
Ali to me is Aaron to Moses.
Yeah, and Hassan ibn Sabit again in that incident wrote some poems and started reading them out loud that would clearly indicate that Ali was Imam and the Caliph. They knew it. They knew it. It's not like it was an ambiguous message. It wasn't like the Quran. It was many incidents, which we're gonna have a separate video about. Actually, I did a video, but I'm gonna do many other videos. But this incident clearly shows that Ali was to be the Caliph, and the Prophet wasn't even buried. That they started this thing called Saqifah. They would, they started saying that Abu Bakr is older, is bigger, I don't know, they were producing arguments, because you need to convince the people that the Prophet didn't say this, or he said it, but it meant some other thing. Like, you have to come up with arguments. It's not changing some small thing. It's like denying the whole thing for me. Because this person, he was the first. Like, you saw him in every war. He didn't run away. Prophet relied on him in many incidents according to you. So you're now to deny this. But they have power, the Fadak. And it's this point that Fatima comes in and plays her role, that says, the conversation happens between Abu Bakr and Fatima that clearly shows the lack of knowledge of Abu Bakr. Contradictions with the exact quotes of Quran, that نحن معاشر الأنبياء لا نورث. We're not going to inherit. We're not gonna, but it contradicts with Waratha Dawood Sulaiman. Like, what about this? Like, Dawood inherited whatever he had from his father, and they were prophets. And he didn't even say this first. He said, you're going to inherit from your father, but I'm not going to inherit from mine. And it's not heritage. It's the thing that I've been owning for 3 years. It's not. And so Fatima died less than 6 months after the Prophet, when she was less than 20, according to some narratives, less than 30. But less than 20, according, you know about her?
The Holy Prophet was 40.
The Holy Prophet was 63 when he was demised.
The Holy Prophet was 40 when he became the Holy Prophet, and right away he got Khadija pregnant, and he died at 63, and Fatima was alive then.
So it's more than 20, some between...
Yes, it's at least 23.
23, yeah, okay, yeah. It's this narrative.
Sorry,
she was young. It's my point that she wasn't ill, she wasn't old, she wasn't like... She was pregnant, Fatima was pregnant, she died along with his son.
I made a mistake. Khadija betrothed, married the Holy Prophet before he became the Holy Prophet.
Yeah.
And Fatima was born before he became the Holy Prophet, if I recall correctly.
It's
But
not, even if
definitely
it's
not.
even if she was born before, it's not that many years ago. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the,
it's but
that year
older
or the
than
year
23.
before. But yeah, like under 25. But there are narratives that she was under 80, she was under 20, she was under 30. Like she was young, let's say, and she was pregnant. So she died less than 6 months, and after it was only after that Ali got to the bay'at did the bay'at, accepted Abu Bakr as the caliph. They denied the right to fadak. They denied the right to wisayat, to being a successor, to carry this responsibility, and they changed the sunnah. They changed whatever Prophet said, because the only thing apparently, which we're going to have a separate video about, the only thing, and this is the point, that the religion is easy because you need to find the person. It's in this story of the Quran that the plan is not going to end with the Prophet, because the Prophet is going to die, but the mission, the establishment of God's kingdom, and you know, they're the servants of God, the worshippers of God, having this community, having this productive, this peaceful, this friendship that they can have, this trust they can build together, the distribution of wealth, and you know, the education and stuff, which even Christians and Jews say that Islam was the reason we learned so many stuff. It was the scholars of Islam that we learned from. And so it was to be this community, as you said, to have a good life, to have a productive, peaceful life. But when you put the most important person aside, for example, like the most important entity is the one, it's the president now, like is the highest in rank. If he gets it wrong, we're screwed, right? He pushes the button of atomic bombs and it would destroy everything. So he has that authority, and it can be harmful, it can be beneficial, it can be very harmful, it can be very beneficial. And when you put that aside, when you ignore it, you're damaging everyone. So the religion that I think to be true, which is Shiism, is very easy, because you need to find your imam. And it is narrated in their books that Prophet explicitly told them many times that my vasaya, my successors, first of them is going to be Ali, and there are going to be 12 successors in their book. This is in their books. Like I want to keep repeating this because this is so important. And there is going to be a person called Mahdi Qa'im Hujjat, our 12th Imam from the descendants of Ali. And he is going to be the person to do the same job, to fill that position. And so never have doubts about it. These are clear quotes that I'm saying. Never have doubts about it. Trust that he will come, and Jesus will come after him. Like he's going to do his prayers. Jesus is going to pray with Mahdi. And Jesus is going to follow Mahdi, like support Mahdi, let's say, support Mahdi in that sense. And Mahdi is going to be wasi, because it's this tradition that if one person exists, if Moses exists, Moses is going to talk, not Harun. There's one person, not too many. Like if in this territory, Moses gets to say everything. So if Mahdi is to fill that position, Jesus comes after him, he's to do the same thing, but he's the person in charge. He has that privilege now. He has that responsibility and has that position now. So for me, it's like, it makes total sense. You look at the story of the Quran, and you see that prophets ask for this privilege, that their descendants have the same thing, have the same privilege. So Prophet had only one daughter, and he raised only one person, Ali. He took it as his son, and he raised him. And so when he says that he's going to be my wasi, and his sons, which are going to be my sons, because Fatima is my daughter, they are going to be my successors. Like it makes total sense. And that's why I'm Shia, because Osman was a clear disaster among those three people. So he got caught, you know, and it's in their books that Osman Osman betrayed Muslim community, literally. Literally. Money he gave to the people that Prophet explicitly told them not to follow, like Abu Sufyan, Muawiyah, and Yazid. Shajarat al-Mal'una. These are in their books. That these people were mal'un, we say. It's a, I don't know how to translate. Cursed. It's a religious kind of curse that like it's you asking for their
evil people.
Yeah, evil people. You say these are mal'uns, and there are narratives that Osman, that Muawiyah, and Abi Sufyan and Yazid, these people, Bani Umayyah, let's say, these people are not good people. These people are not going to follow Islam. They're going to be opposing sides of Islam. I don't know if it's the right structure, but whatever. These are not going to support this idea. And Osman give these people money, give these people land, and would gather wealth and not distribute it properly to people to the level that they got angry from different sides of the territory of Islam, the land of Islam, which expanded in the time of the second caliph. And that happened. And Ali was the clear message of the Prophet. Like Quran, which my last narrative would be this, that the Prophet explicitly said to them, this is in their books as well, that "Inni tarikun fikum al-thaqalain." I'm gonna leave two heavy things. Two grand things among you. The first is going to be the Quran, Kitab Allah, the book of God, and itrati, which means my family, itrati ahl bayti. And ma in tamassaktum bihima lan tadillu abada. As long as you follow these two things together, you're not going to be misguided. So how can we interpret Ahl Bayt and Itrat to Abu Bakr and Umar? How can we do this? For me, it's like, it's as clear can get. As it can get. So that's why I believe in Shia idea. And they say that Shia was a term coined by Abdullah ibn Sabah, but they're wrong. According to their books, Shia was the term that the Prophet explicitly told Ali under many verses of the Quran. One, for example, it was the 8th in Surah Bayyinah that would say, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمْ خَيْرُ الْبَرِيَّةِ. People who believe and they do good, they are the best of people. And the Prophet points to Ali and says, "Hum anta wa shi'atuka ya Ali." They are you and your followers, O Ali. Shia was a term coined by the Prophet. This is in their books. If I find a narrative from their books that Prophet called Shia to the followers of Ali, the people that believe in Ali as being a successor, being the Wazir, being the Caliph, I'm going to say yes in no seconds, because it's clear as day. Like you accept Islam, and Islam says this person. For me, it's like Harun. Like Moses left the descendants of Israel for 30 days. He promised them that I would be back in 30 days, and God told him to stay more for 10 days. And he came back, and they were worshipping this goat called Samiri, and he gets the calf.
Kusale.
Calf?
This calf.
Yeah. They were worshipping this animal, this idol that they made. That was a shape of animal, and they would do stuff. That would make sounds. But he asked his brother, well, "Why didn't you do anything?" And Harun says, "Inni khashitu an taqula farraqta bayna bani Israel." I was afraid that you tell me I divided these people, and so I didn't do anything. And you see that they disobeyed Harun when he was to be the caliph, when he was to be the successor. The same story happened in Islam, and most Muslims, they're Muslims on paper, like they have all the rights, but they're not actually supporting the mission. Because the mission now is to follow Mahdi, is to follow Qa'im, is to follow Hujjat, which was indicated by the sayings of the Prophet, by the narratives from the Prophet. When they denied Ali, they changed the whole story and created this mess that we have all these branches of Islam, 73 branches of Islam, that all have their interpretations, all have their understandings of Islam, and they would be they would be extremist groups that would take one quote from the Quran, قاتلوا أئمة الكفر, go kill the imams of disbelieving, and we have to kill, for now we have to conquer, we have to expand. And I think it all happened because they denied what was the most obvious, what was the most clear message of the Prophet, that you're not to interpret this text, you're not to touch it, you're just to trust Ali, you're not to disobey him. That's I think would suffice. And sorry.
Okay.
Thank you for the tolerance.
No, we have to pick this up. Okay, I'm sitting my back to camera, so okay, we're gonna pick this up later.
I'm gonna say goodbye to each and every one of you. Thank you if you watched until this point of the video. I'm gonna say thank you. I hope it cleared stuff for you, and I hope you start reading the text of the Quran and the text of Tamam al-Nahj al-Balagha, which is the book gathered from the sayings of Ali ibn Abi Talib, which is a very, very, very different book. This is my interpretation. Again, I'm not speaking on behalf of Muslim community or my brother or anybody else for that matter. I'm just saying my experience with this book, it was that it's different, but it's the same. Like, you just compare Nahj al-Balagha, Tamam al-Nahj al-Balagha. Remember, Tamam al-Nahj al-Balagha, the completed version of this book. Just read it and compare it to the Quran. And you will find amazing things that you can learn from, and that makes you be sure that this religion and this message was a true message, and we're blessed to be servants of God and worshippers of God with this ideology and with this pure spirit and religion. Thank you so much, and hope to see you in the next one.